A major decision by a jury on Sunday in Toronto has led to a man being found not guilty in the death of a police officer.
I never meant any of this to happen. I am sorry for what had happened.
The Toronto jury deliberating for just a few days, they found that UMAR Zamir, a 34-year-old accountant, recent arrival to Canada, not guilty of first-degree murder or manslaughter after hitting and killing the police officer in question, Jeffrey Northrup. Zamir's lawyer proving beyond a reasonable doubt that he didn't mean to kill the officer because he didn't know that Northrup and his partner were police officers. That's because the whole thing happened in an underground parkade after midnight and just under Toronto's City Hall, just after Canada Day back in 2021. The officers were there as part of an undercover operation. They were not wearing their uniforms. And Zamir, with his pregnant wife beside him in the car and their baby, the officers came up to the car, began banging on the windows. Zamir said he thought they were being robbed. He hit reverse and ended up hitting the officer. Listen to this.
Our members, both sworn and civilian, in the Toronto police family are still devastated by the tragic and sudden loss of their friend and colleague.
That's Toronto's police chief, who won't comment on allegations of perjury from his officers that the police officers may have lied in court, as questions remain around their testimonies. 3 police witnesses said that Jeffrey Northrup was standing with his hands raised in front of him when the car went backwards. That's something that 2 crash reconstruction experts could not confirm or corroborate. The judge also told the jury to consider if the police officers might have colluded beforehand to get their stories straight. Today, we heard from the leader of the NDP in Ontario, Marit Stiles, saying there needs to be more transparency with the police.
We need more accountability and transparency, and I expect there will be, and I hope there will be lessons learned from this case and the handling of it. But right now, I gotta say, for me and for us in the NDP, it's not a time to celebrate. It's not a time to politicize the situation.
All right, let's bring in Kim Schofield. She's a criminal defense lawyer. Hey, Kim, thanks for your time today, as always.
Yes, thanks, Todd.
All right, so we have the verdict. Not a big surprise. This is what a lot of people thought might happen, given some of the circumstances here. Can I get your thoughts, and also just specifically around this issue of the testimony of those 3 police officers, and a lot of questions there?
Okay, so remember this case began with Mr. Zamir being charged and then, of course, applying for bail and being granted bail. And there was a lot of attention in the media about and comments from politicians about the travesty of him having received bail and calling into question the decision of the judge. So we have all of this background, and then there's a publication ban. And then fast forward, we have the trial. And we have the witnesses, the police officers who were present, testifying to a version of events that could not have happened. And it could not have happened even on the Crown's own evidence from the reconstruction experts, the accident reconstruction experts. But what Justice Malloy was asking the Crown about, and what the defense really was focused on, is in eyewitness cases, we often have inaccurate accounts. But if you have inaccurate accounts that are all the same, it calls into question about whether there's collusion. Now, in a case like this, collusion isn't necessarily all of the officers getting together to get their story straight. But sometimes collusion can happen in a way that may not necessarily be intentional. In other words, it's a stressful situation. The officers are talking about the death of their friend, their colleague. It's a traumatic event. So there may have been collusion, and the question is really whether this was an attempt to obstruct the process, an attempt to lie to the court, or whether it's the result of sharing stories in a way that's less nefarious.
Yeah, so what are the takeaways here for, let's say, the Toronto police chief, Kim, and also people watching this case closely and wondering what's going on here?
Well, I think there are a couple takeaways. Number one is the justice system is used to dealing with situations involving death, whether it be accidental or intentional homicide, and leave it to the judges to decide, is this an appropriate case for bail? And suspend your passing of judgment, because sometimes the cloak of the presumption of innocence ends up being true. It ends up that somebody is actually not guilty of something. So suspend passing of judgment. I would also say police officers, the plain clothes, that's an issue. They should be identified somehow as police officers, not when they're undercover, but when they're detectives and they're investigating somebody. They should wear something that identifies themselves as police officers. And the public, just a caution not to jump to conclusions, because as horrible as this whole situation was, it was found to be, and I think we're all of the same view, correctly, to be a tragic accident as opposed to a first-degree murder.
Yeah, just before we go, any surprise, Kim, with the result of this trial?
No, I don't. I think there certainly is a surprise if you look from the very beginning to the end. But as the trial unfolded and as the publication ban began to be lifted, so in other words, you can hear about what's happening in the course of the trial, I think then there's no surprise. But from beginning to end, very, very, very different situation as we began to understand it.
Kim, appreciate you taking time for us today and weighing in on this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Kim Schofield, criminal defense lawyer in Toronto.